Hey, welcome to True Story. This is John Gibson, and today joining us will be Dylan Falduto. Did I say that right, Dylan?
Sure did.
Thank you, my man. Okay, Dylan's a good friend of mine. Dylan is a really multifaceted guy. I love talking to him and learning more about him and his perspective. Dylan's a teacher. He's a musician, mental health advocate, vegan athlete. Just totally complex dude. Dylan, thanks for joining us, coming in and coming on today as well.
Hey, thanks for having me, John. I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. Hey, my pleasure. You know, like right out of the chute, I really wanted to, I thought about what I wanted to ask, right? And I was like, where do I want to start this conversation? Because there's so much I wanted to learn. And I guess, to begin with, I just wanted to start like present day. As a teacher, as a high school teacher, I want to hear your perspective. What is it like working in a remote capacity? And just maybe starting there and maybe the differences to what it used to be, but like what's your day like right now? What is that like?
Yeah, no, good question, John. I guess my perspective on it is I think we're certainly doing the very best we can, given
Mhm.
a obviously very unprecedented time in a global pandemic.
Sure.
So when we started last March, it was we kind of gave a couple of weeks just to kind of let the students kind of gather themselves, and a lot of their families are really affected by the pandemic directly, and we kind of were doing self-paced work. We kind of realized that doesn't really work the best for high school students. So then we implemented a bell schedule, and so we try to mimic basically what would be going on in our building. Like, you're at this class for 50 minutes, you have your passing period. My school personally has since implemented what we call block scheduling, and so we alternate longer periods every other day. Today being Wednesday, we actually have all the periods like a regular Wednesday because we have I don't know. They do this one day of the week where everything's shorter, but yeah, basically in essence, we try to mimic what would happen at the school.
Hmm.
But yeah, it does pose some unique challenges for diverse learners. So I'm a special education certified teacher. I
Hmm.
co-teach in the general setting, social studies and English, but that poses some unique challenges for some of my students and also my ELL learners, so English language learners.
Hmm.
But overall, I would say kids are doing pretty good.
Good.
And for some of my students, it's even presenting some opportunities to kind of come out of their shell because they can utilize like the chat feature to respond to things where they might have been really shy in class. They can do
Wow.
that. Use some more technology based uh, resources
Hmm.
to integrate into their work. So it's cool. I mean, I think given everything, it's going pretty good. Of course, you get stir crazy.
Yeah.
I love the house I live in, but nonetheless, it would be nice to kind of get out and go to the building sometime. So yeah, that's kind of where
Hmm.
we're at.
Well, I think yeah, I appreciate that so much, but I feel like it's a little better than I had anticipated of an answer, which is good. I never would have considered about like the chat feature and those things, and like, maybe more shy kids being able to utilize that. That's awesome. Like that, to be able to utilize that tool. Um, but yeah, I was really curious to hear about like the impact it was having on these kids because again, just having that extra separation there, what that was looking like. Kind of switching gears a little, because I don't think we've ever talked about this. And it's kind of a two-part question. I hope it makes sense. But obviously, I know you're an athlete and you're a competitor. So I'd like if you don't mind kind of expanding upon like sort of what led you to that and competing. But the second part of the question is, which I feel like really makes you unique, is that you're a vegan. So I know this is two really loaded questions, right? But if you can, you can also expand on maybe why you chose to be a vegan and ultimately how these things intertwine, because I'm just fascinated by the lifestyle that you've chosen, the commitment it takes, and then someone who like me, who's a carnivore, the fear of even trying it is like, oh my gosh, how would this impact me athletically? So selfishly, I want to, again, hear your perspective on all of this.
Yeah, yeah. First part of the question, like, how did I become an athlete? Well, when I was actually just talking about this last night, funny enough, but I started with Taekwondo when I was pretty young and I was like a fat kid and I just,
Mm, I
like
never would have guessed that.
yeah.
Wow.
So I always like martial arts a lot, like Bruce Lee movies, and I always like Bruce Lee's philosophy a lot.
Yeah.
But I was also kind of like a troubled kid too, so I was also very punk rock and kind of getting into some rough stuff. And I ended up doing Taekwondo for a couple of years, and then quit, and then was like playing in rock and roll punk bands, and then I ended up just kind of getting into like weightlifting as a kid, you know, like I just wanted to get fit and stuff and, you know, got unfat and all that. And so that I did rugby for like a couple months, but like rugby was cool. And I don't really know anything about rugby, but like, I don't know, I was like okay at it, but it wasn't really my thing. And I always like loved MMA. Like I would get the UFC tapes when I was really little, kind of a classic story. You go to the video store and get the VHS.
Sure.
And my dad would rent them for me and all that. So I was always like aware of it. And then my buddy Jason was kind of like showing me the more modern UFCs at the time. So it was like early 2000s, and he was a few years older than me. So then eventually I just went to a local gym and kind of, it was actually like some UFC veterans there and stuff. And it was kind of a rough and tumble gym. I didn't really know what I was doing. Took a fight way too soon and lost. And then I ended up with some guys who kind of took me under their wing who were a lot cooler. So Nick Aguilar, who's a UFC veteran, is like the man, and his brother Hank, and then Gerald Mearshart, who's actively in the UFC, was my old roommate and coach, and they kind of got me up to snuff, and it really built up, especially I would say like my MMA wrestling was always my probably one of my finer points. I was good at getting guys down and just kind of pounding on them, and pretty good jiu-jitsu for not being a jiu-jitsu guy, and decent stand up. So then so I was doing my thing for a little bit, and had some decent wins and that. And then to kind of segue into veganism, you know, I had some friends, like my old good friend, roommate Trevor was vegetarian, some other people in my life, but I was always, to your point, a little hesitant, like, well, I'm an athlete, stuff like that. But I started seeing guys like Mac Danzig, who's fully vegan. Diaz brothers kind of flirted with it. Jake Shields, vegetarian, and she got to train with him last year in Manhattan. That guy is
really, man. I love him. I'm a huge fan.
Yeah, he's a beast. So that they definitely influenced me. And then before a fight in 2011, I decided to give up meat, and I was like still vegetarian, but like just kind of figuring it out. And my weight cut just like went a lot easier, and I just liked it. And then kind of became aware of like some of the more like ethical implications of veganism. So the environment was a big one for me, and animal welfare. I think when you really start understanding what goes on like in slaughterhouses, and even though I've been vegan for almost 10 years, and this last year I just started doing activism, and I've been like visiting slaughterhouses and documenting the conditions, and it's really brutal. And even taking that next step for me has like kind of really ingrained in me like why I do this. And it's definitely nothing where most of my friends eat meat and I'm like the least preachy, as you know, but just on a personal level and in terms of like raising awareness, it's something that really matters to me. And as far as how that's impacted me athletically, I mean, I think it's a really great lifestyle. I mean, I was a tough kid before I went vegan, and I was like, you know, fit and muscular and stuff. I don't feel like I lost a beat. And over the years, I've definitely just gotten smarter in general. So I think it's a combination of the diet, but also like just understanding like more is not always more. So like I still train a lot. Like I lifted yesterday earlier in the day and did some jiu-jitsu at night, but you understand how to like taper things off at the right time. And each of these sessions, you understand like, you know, how hypertrophy works. If you're trying to build muscle, if you're trying to get leaner, you understand how to balance your nutrients, when to eat and when not to eat, and all that stuff. So, you know, to be honest, it's a combination of that, but you can definitely hit all that and then some on a vegan diet. And I think the other advantage is like no cholesterol. You just save a lot of BS. I mean, there's certainly a lot of good vegan junk food out there now, but you know, if you're at work and someone's eating donut holes, you can't eat them. So you're not going to eat that. And just taking out a lot of that inflammatory properties of animal products, I think is really good for an athlete. So.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly is. Again, I say it from a perspective of having never tried it, but knowing for sure inflammation's bad. Especially, you know, being athletic, we live with it, right? We're always injured in some capacity. It's just like, where on the spectrum are you, you know? And I really do love the principles of your lifestyle. I mean, honestly, for a lot of reasons, I love the mindfulness of it. Everything that you just spoke to, meaning like timing food, when to eat, when not to eat, when is it relevant? Obviously being mindful of what you're putting in your body instead of just what tastes good is a really different change for, I think, anybody. Anytime somebody tries a diet, it's like, whoa, it's pretty earth shaking the first time you make such a change like that to your life. So I like that. And then candidly too, as you said it, visiting slaughterhouses, that's the sort of thing that, like, again, as a meat eater, like, I don't even watch documentaries because I know the guilt I'll feel. Like, I just know it. And that's bad, probably, the fact that I'm ignoring it, just saying, because I'm just sort of choosing it for whatever reason. So I'm definitely more open-minded to all philosophies around nutrition and all, but I love to hear somebody that's like living it and practicing it and getting their practical experience. Yeah, it's great. And especially someone I respect that has like an output, like a physical output, like you. Like, it's pretty impressive, extremely impressive. But yeah, awesome, man. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, thanks, John. I appreciate it.
Yeah. No, you touched on this also a little, but again, I just like love to learn more. I mean, I've heard you play guitar a little, online and things, and I love your technique. I love your style. I think it's awesome. But you said that you were in a punk band growing up. What? That's not what I imagined. Like, when I'm hearing like chill blues riffs. So so can you like, how did that happen? Maybe talk a little bit, like expand around some early musical influences, and then like who did you play with, or like any cool experiences to share?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, probably my biggest musical influence is definitely my dad, who I still make music with all the time. And I'm
Cool.
really, really fortunate. But he's been a lifelong blues musician. He's been with his wife now for 20 years, and they
Mm,
they have a group together. She's a touring blues musician, and
wow.
their drummer Merle Perkins, I've recorded with. He's played with Buddy Guy, Albert King, Junior Wells, like all like the really big hitters,
Hmm.
basically. So blues is always a big thing in our household. My brother is like a really phenomenal guitarist too.
Wow.
I would say of all of them, I'm probably like the least talented, but
That's crazy.
I'm a pretty
Wow.
good songwriter, and
Oh,
I
yeah.
got good taste. Like, I think I have a good groove, but but
Yeah.
yeah. So early influences, a lot of blues. My dad took me to see James Brown when I was like 11, so
Oh,
that
man.
was that was pretty badass. And then
Yeah.
um the Stones, like all that kind of stuff.
Sure.
And then I just got really into punk as a kid, because there was a pretty vibrant scene around in this area. So I grew up like an hour north here in Kenosha, Wisconsin, and my dad moved here when I was 14. So I kind of got they had like a really crazy old school punk scene that was like kind of grimy, to be honest, and nasty. And
Mm,
then I
mm.
started coming down this way, and it was like my buddies in this band, the Street Rats, and they were what they call like 77 punk. So I was kind of like coming to the city, and I kind of knew like I wanted to go this way, because it's just a little stylish, and
Yeah.
I never really wanted to stay like in a smaller town, so I
Sure,
was kind of
sure.
happy to come here as a teen. But then yeah, so I was playing in punk bands and stuff like that, and opening for some groups I liked, and but I always kind of had it in the back of my mind, like I really enjoy blues. I'm a big like Chris Isaac fan, so I was kind of like that. But
Wow. Wow.
yeah, that kind of a vibe, and so I kind of
Wow.
always knew I would make some stuff like that as well. You know what
Mm,
I mean? And so then going into my 20s now, 30 years old, yeah, that probably comes out a little bit more in my music.
mhm.
The other thing too is I just feel like at this age, well, first of all, we're in a pandemic anyways, but even if there were shows, it's like a little weird being like playing at a punk show, because, well, I would still do it, I guess, but it's like, I don't know. It's just like, it's different, because it was kind of old hat when I got into it. Like,
Mm,
that's an old scene. And so I was kind of like
mm.
bopping around, like I was a young kid. And now
Yeah.
I was weird. It's like, I don't know if I will like play music for teenagers now. It's like, I don't know. I just feel like being an adult, the blues
Right.
kind of more my bag. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, and also, like, you'd hate to risk one of your students showing up.
Yeah.
Like, that'd be a bummer
Well, yeah, and they
at a
wouldn't. Yeah,
punk show.
yeah, my students wouldn't show up anyways. First of all, but yeah, it's weird. But plus, like, yeah, I don't even know like who's making punk now. It's a weird
Mm,
vibe. Like
hmm.
like guitar music in general now is in a weird place, because
Mm,
it's just like, I don't know. I don't really know who makes it. And a lot of the
yeah.
rock that I hear is like, I think the hip hop's way, because I like a lot of hip hop too. I like a lot
Hmm.
of electronic based music, and it's like, you know what?
Mm,
To me, they're doing more interesting things now than most bands with guitars. So, but I try to keep the spirit alive for sure.
For sure.
Hold down the old school, but do it with some soul. You know what I mean? Do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, you're so talented for sure. No, I love it. And it's
Thanks,
funny
brother.
that it's funny to share that too, because it's like punk to me is like such a young man's game. It feels like it's like to you know, it's to say it's to, you know, to buck authority and like, you know, it just seems like, so for that to be an old man scene now, I get it. Seems a little like,
It's weird. It'll always be
yeah,
in my heart, but yeah, it's like
sure.
I ran into this because I was still had a group in my early 20s, and we did some decent things, but I kind of ran into that too, where it just felt like, man, I feel like I'm kind of in a bit of like a time warp, like a black hole almost. It was like this
Yeah.
is cool, but then it's like, all right, I'm like training, I'm running here, I got graduate classes, and now it's like I'm playing this. You know, you play for some big bands, right? Like
Yeah.
you got like a big stage, but then it's like, all right, here's $50 and 3 drink tickets for Paps, and you're just kind of like I don't know.
Yeah.
I get a little burned out on that, and especially as I value like balance more in my life, and
Yeah.
which isn't the easiest thing to work on, and it just becomes
Hmm.
a thing where I'm kind of like, I got a nice house now, I'm chilling.
Hmm.
I want to work out, I want to feel good, and
Yeah.
yeah, when I do want to play music, I want it to kind of rejuvenate me
Totally.
more than turn
Yeah.
it. So yeah,
You know, you just touched on something that's just awesome. I'm so glad you said it. Balance, right?
yeah.
I left out something huge, which leads me to say, how do you do it? How do you find balance? But you're a successful business owner, so that's a whole that's a whole nother huge facet of your life. So just share a little bit about that. And again, I'd love to just share about that in general, and then COVID. What has that done? What has that changed? So man, please share.
Yeah, thanks, John. So yeah, so I became a business owner in 20 late, what was it, late 2017. I acquired a photo booth business, and 2018 was when it really kind of took off. And I initially had a business partner and eventually acquired it for myself. So it's a company called Hello Flashy,
Hmm.
and we do corporate, wedding, pretty much any kind of social event, photo booths. And so they're kind of
Hmm.
standalone apparatuses, a very user
Hmm.
friendly. Tap on them. They take photo strips or 4x6 prints,
Hmm.
digital, text message, etc. Really fun time. So
That's
we can
cool.
fully customize the experience, green screens. But I kind of just like stumbled into it, and then
Mhm.
in my mindset, I just really get into things, and so I just went really, really hard, and a lot of it was like organic. There was some infrastructure in place as the prior owner like had a website, but it was even by his own admission, his like most neglected business. He was like a serial entrepreneur, you could say, and so
Mhm.
I just really ran with it and built up a
Mhm.
lot of clients. And I always say it's all about the repeats, the referrals, and the reviews. And
I love it.
yeah, yeah. And I thought of that myself one day, but I was
Oh,
like,
I love it.
it kind of works.
Yeah.
But that's really, yeah, how the business took off.
Mhm.
And yeah, I was doing amazing through 2019. December of 2019 was my biggest month to date by far. And then January was very solid. And then COVID happened. So
Mhm.
COVID, yeah, took a pretty big hit on things. Being in the event industry, I still did a handful of events later in 2020, where there was some degree of social distancing occurring in theory, and
Yeah. Yeah.
some states that have less regulations and things. So it was good to be able to kind of stick that out. But
Good.
yeah, it's a tough spot. I'm still actively booking. Like I booked one last week, which is cool. And now, like, I
Great.
mean, I used to book events every day, but now you get one. It's like, yeah, it makes you grateful.
Mhm.
But no, I've been really proud. And I became a homeowner this year, and that the big
Mhm.
way of where I was able to put my down
Mhm.
payment down was like because of my business. So everything is still a work in progress, but
Mhm.
I'm confident that I'll get through this pandemic and keep things rocking and rolling. So
Yeah, for sure you will. And congratulations also on your home. It's a
thank you, brother. Yeah.
huge achievement, huge achievement.
Yeah.
Um, man, so, we talked about balance and all that, but I'll say one thing. You mentioned the word you're grateful, and I'll say that as someone that knows you and follows you and everything, I feel like you really you practice gratitude. You practice, you post. You're certainly, in my opinion, a very positive mental health advocate. I don't know if you self-identify yourself that way. You should. If you don't, I think I don't know what, but that's how I feel at least. What led you to just maybe, look, it takes a certain type of person to be introspective enough to kind of go there, right? To even evaluate those things about themselves. But moreover, I think it takes an even more unique person to be brave enough to just kind of put those messages out there. And I know it because I've done it, and I've had a lot of people respond positively, and I probably had a lot of people I know have responded negatively. You know, they just, for whatever reasons, you know, it just provokes different things in people. But you're consistent, and you're consistently positive, and it's inspiring. So where does that come from, man?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, John, it comes from necessity, because like not everything has gone the easiest for me in my life, and some of that is things out of my control, and some of it was my own doing. I mean, I think at a certain point, especially as you become an adult, you really, like, I think the word is accountability. You really have to look at, like, what are the choices I made, and everything becomes a sequence of events, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
I think that there like I got into I like literally just happened to have this next to me, but this is a book called Living a Life of Awareness, and so this is one that I post from a lot. It's
Mm.
by Don Miguel Ruiz Jr. So his dad wrote the Four Agreements, and
Oh, okay.
I got exposed to those books a couple of years ago, and they really were like eye-opening. And I would say they ultimately were life-changing. But the thing is, like, you can't just like read books and then expect like your life to change. I mean, it will definitely invoke like your thinking to open up. It can allow you to
Mm-hmm.
form new habits. But I've had to dig a little deeper and really recognize that like it's tough in life, especially, and I know being your friend, we've talked about this, but when you have kind of had you know certain like either like traumatic events occur in your life, or just rough things, or maybe a rough childhood, or just hard times, it can be where you have to continuously build on that and build upon yourself. And it's hard when you realize too as an adult that like you can, like, for instance, have like your career on track, you can have really really great friends, athletics, business, but if you don't really evaluate like some small things in your life, your relationships may not work. You may just not be as happy as you could be. You may find stress and things like that. So I've always evaluated that, but definitely in 2020, I just really reassessed that, because,
Mm-hmm.
I did experience some incredible highs. I think for a lot of people, they say 2020 was like a really rough year. For
Mm-hmm.
me, in all honesty, even with the business and everything, it was a pretty awesome year. Like like I said, I became a homeowner. I
Yeah.
achieved some things that I didn't expect, but I did have some personal setbacks, and I had to really like look at why that was. And so introspection is really important to me, because like you have to find that balance between being accountable to yourself, recognizing like what might not just work for you in the world, but it's a continuous cycle, because I think if you don't do that, yeah, you can be a high functioning person that lives with anxiety or depression or whatever, but you're not going to get the most out of your life that you could.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'm a huge mental health advocate. I do regularly attend therapy.
Mm-hmm.
I journal,
Mm-hmm.
and I do a lot of these readings and things like that, because yeah, truthfully, like I do need it. I think
Mm-hmm.
that it's like any skill set. Like you can't just get good at jujitsu or music or business. Like you have to practice it. And
Right.
like I said, you can read good stuff and you may even reference it in some cases in your life. But I think it's
Mm-hmm.
like anything in life. Like, if you're in a fight and you're untrained, when the pressure comes on, you're going to panic, or you're going to cease up, because you're not in the, you're not conditioned. Right. And so I think
Correct.
when it comes to mental health, it's really important to practice it all the
Mm-hmm.
time, because
Mm-hmm.
stressors will come in your life, and it's easy to slip. And I mean,
Of course.
and I'm at a point too where I realize, like, again, it's not like I don't have any kids or felonies, or I've never like, I'm not the kind of guy, I don't smash things when I get angry, but
Right.
even just having arguments over the years, or
Oh, of
things that have
course.
not worked for me, or
Mm-hmm.
I just look at all those things, and I do have a tendency to be hard on myself. This is true, but
Mm-hmm.
beyond that, though, I do see that legitimately, hey man, you really didn't have to handle that situation that way.
Yeah.
You could have been a bigger and better person. You did
Mm-hmm.
hurt someone's feelings at some point, or you just didn't perform optimally. And so
Mm-hmm.
I've realized that you have to be compassionate with yourself. So you can't, yeah, you can't berate yourself, but you have to
Mm-hmm.
strike that balance and go, hey, look, in hindsight, this is how this is the replacement behavior I'd like. So I think a big one is, things don't just go away. You do have to replace them. So you have to find, if at one point in my life, if I got frustrated, I'm going to swear a bunch or shut down, because that's usually like people go one way or the other or both.
Sure.
Kind of go, hey man, in the future, I think, this would be much more constructive to think about it this way. Or, sometimes too, it can be, I need to navigate away from certain things in my life to maximize what really matters, And so, 30 years young, that is my my highest priority, so that I can get the most out of my next decade,
Well, my man, you found it a lot sooner than I did. So you're, in my opinion, ahead of the game. I mean, my next question was going to be, what do you practice to help, enforce that accountability? But you really answered it through journaling and sort of these daily practices and stuff. I mean, I find that, I believe, first of all, yes, amen to everything you said. Let me start there. But for me, exactly, I was inspired by books. I was inspired by good people and influences in my life. But until I started correcting the behavior, it was really kind of meaningless, other than now I couldn't say I was ignorantly dumb. Now I was just being dumb or whatever, selfish in some of those bad behaviors. It wasn't really until I started implementing mirror work that I had that, to your point, that kind of accountability session with myself. It was like, okay, I want to be the better person. And I don't know if you felt this, and I don't know that I've ever shared this, but I just would love your insight on it as well. But when I really started implementing these daily practices, because again, to your point, like jujitsu or music or any other business, any other practice in our lives, you have to practice, to perfect it. And it takes repetition, right? So mirror work was completely foreign to me. It felt like the most narcissistic thing to go stare at myself in a mirror and talk to myself and tell myself, like, go have a good day, and I'm proud of you. It felt so fake. But I stayed committed to the process. And that sounds like really generic, right? But I did. It was like day one, day two, day two. But ultimately, what I started doing to kind of get myself through it in the maybe first 30 days or so was a principle I think I stole from Joe Rogan or something I had heard. But I just was kind of doing it almost like an addict, a day at a time. And I was saying, like, today, I know this is the guy I want it to be. I want it to check 3 boxes. I really want it to be the best daddy I could be, like the best one in the world that like I could be. I want it to be the best husband I could be. These are the biggest ways I can feel the world, I think, or the people I care the most, right? And then I wanted to be successful. I wanted to be able to go do what, like, my wants and needs, but earn it, right? Because I just don't know another way. There's no trust fund waiting on me, right? So I had to earn that stuff. So it was like every day, how do I align with those sort of 3 things, right? And if I did curse at my wife, or if I did get short with one of my kids or something, I had to account for it the next day in the mirror. And man, did I change as a human? Boy, did I start changing as a human. And it was just because daily I had that accountability tool, and it wasn't to beat myself up. I was doing that because I knew the mirror was coming 23 hours later. The minute after I did that action, it was like, oh, why did I do that? And then I felt not just guilt. I felt like, be better, be motivated to be better, and then go make that right, whatever that situation. But anyway, I say all that to say this. I felt like I was faking it until I made it, and I am in no way, shape, or form an evolved human being. I still make mistakes every day. That's why I try to give grace to everybody I meet. Did you feel that way though? Does that resonate with you at all?
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely relate to a lot of what you're saying for sure. And I feel like I'm still kind of in the thick of my journey. And
sure,
of course,
everybody, me too. Yeah.
Yeah, of course, everybody is different. But yeah, no, I can relate to a lot of that. I think for myself, it's like, yeah, just being accountable to be at my best and not find excuses to do less. Like, and one thing I really, really like that you touched on was like, once you have that in awareness and then you do kind of screw up, like it's a lot worse because like, and I was also listening to something with John Joseph recently, who's another vegan athlete, he's a singer of the Chromags. He was saying the same thing, like, or I was reading it actually. He was basically saying that like once you, cause he like gave up drugs and like went vegan and got into Hare Krishna and that in the 80s. And then later he had a relapse, and he was saying it's like really rough, because it's like when you're just doing stuff that you shouldn't be doing, it stings a lot more. Now, personally, like I don't have like a drug addiction or anything like that, but just when I do just screw up and I resort, like, man, I kind of was just being really negative, or I'm like I have a tendency to ruminate. So when I start ruminating on things from the past or things that just shouldn't be on my mind, that's always when I feel too like, oh man. But what I realize is like, again, you always have to go back to that self-compassion, and you always have to remember that like it's really, really hard to do this kind of work, particularly when you are building up from, maybe many years of unrest in certain areas of your life. And I think that one thing that is really important, and I kind of see this like in education as well, and something I encourage in my students, is you have to play to your strengths, and like even something my dad said to me recently is like, just like remember like all like the great things you have done in life. So like if one area of your life like hasn't worked out for you, like it can be overwhelming, especially if it really matters to you. But you have to like look at everything else, and you have to say to yourself, like in your case, like like I am a great dad. I am like pushing to be the best I can. I'm striving for my goals and being a good example. And if I do screw up, like be accountable to it. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And just own up, and don't make excuses. And and it can be tough, because like one thing that I've also ran into in the world too is like you can be accountable, but then you also have to be aware that sometimes like someone's opinion of you too isn't necessarily indicative of who you are, or like the full spectrum of things, and or multiple people's opinions or how you're perceived. So like that can also be tricky, because being accountable doesn't mean agreeing with everything that's said about you, or that could be assumed to be said about you. You know what I mean? So you have to kind of you have to take accountability for like what in your heart, you could do better in life. And then you also have to be able to recognize that like you're still not going to please everybody. You know what I mean? Like people might listen to this podcast and think we're too big narcissistic D-bags or whatever, but it's like at the end of the day,
it'll happen.
Yeah,
we'll get a couple of them.
At the end of the day though, it's like, well, okay, like say I'm not, I have no control over how I am perceived by people, but I do have control over like legitimately like how I can feel before I go to bed and how I wake up in the morning. And that's something I'm working really, really hard to just always feel the best. And one bit of advice I would just give people is like, always like fill your bank up. So like, if you can be the most productive you can be in a day, be the nicest you can be, be the most forgiving to yourself and others. And like, and tangible steps. Like if you just know like, hey, like I shouldn't do this thing, or this doesn't work for me, and you avoid things like that, or avoid people you need to avoid, the more you do that stuff, you can just like look at the thing and go, hey, you know what? Like, even if I'm not feeling the greatest, or I'm having a bad day or whatever, it's like, I still did these things.
Absolutely.
It's tougher when you kind of walk that line. And if you're doing things you shouldn't be doing, and that, like you said, John, it's a lot harder to sit with. But if you just do the right thing, you're going to feel better.
I absolutely. And filling that bank is such an important concept, because you're going to have to call on that when, if or do you fail yourself, or look, maybe you didn't fail anything. Sometimes we're just plain hard on ourselves. And I've had some pretty crazy moments in my life, but I would say in totality, nobody has been harder on me than myself, like nobody. And I live in my own head. And I feel that, again, to your point, we're not going to be everybody's cup of tea, but I feel like at the end of the day, the reason why you deserve a platform, and I'm so excited to talk to you and stuff, is because you're making active efforts to be positive and put a light in the world, and more of that. And I try to do that. And it never feels disingenuous. I'm the first person to tell like somebody like, I am not perfect. I'm not perfect. And then I just try to be as best of a listener as I could be, because I don't judge people. I try not to judge people. There's very few things I could do where I'd be like, that's it, go, but even if I have to manufacture that light like you do, that positivity, it's still the place I would rather live in and resonate in. And I agree. If you can pick even one of those things you named, just let me be nice to somebody today, or let me just, whatever, pick one of those actions. It does help you go to bed feeling way more self-realized, I think, and accomplished for sure. And that momentum builds again, just like training physically or jujitsu or an instrument. That good stuff builds too and changes you as a person. I mean, I tell people, and I hope it can, and it will, because I'm committed to it. But I hope it does the rest of my life. But I'll meet people or talk to people like you that I've known a year, maybe 2 years or three, and I'm like, you should have seen me 5 years ago. And the people that knew me 5 years ago are like, you should have seen him 10 years ago. It's just like we all evolve, and we hope for the better. But I think talking about these things, like I learned from you, I learned from you, I learned from others, and I get motivated and inspired by people who are actionable, and don't just, I hate to be callous, but talk the talk, that try to live it. And you don't have to be perfect. No one ever has to be perfect to be one of my people, matter of fact, I like the more flawed, the better sometimes, because they're textured, right? And they have a depth of understanding and compassion. Usually, some of the most bruised people, they're able to get through all the BS sometimes, right? And then just connect on a level because they can truly relate sometimes a little more, I think. I don't know. Is that what maybe some of these principles and all, is that sort of what led you to teaching?
Yeah, I mean, so my dad is a teacher as well, and so that was a
Mm.
big influence. But yes, I think that just and he always worked with at-risk students, and so I was definitely motivated to do that. And
Wow.
I teach 10 minutes from where I live here on the west side of Chicago. So I live in Humboldt Park, and I teach in Garfield
Mm.
Park. And yeah, it's a big thing to me, like
Mm.
understanding that a lot of people out there are carrying a lot, and especially a lot
Mm.
of my students are carrying a lot, and it's a really critical time in their life where they're kind of at a crossroads and they can go one way or the other. And I mean, I relate on many levels because I feel at 30 years old, I'm also at my own crossroads where it's like
Mm.
I can build upon the success I have and really find deep fulfillment in my life, where I can, do what a lot of guys my age do, which is perfectly fine. You can kind of keep hanging out, which is there's nothing wrong with that. But for me
Mm.
personally, I'm on the level up path. I want to
Mm.
continue to get the most and be the most that I can be. And so that's definitely something that I try to foster in my
Mm.
students, because I believe that's the best way to live. It's
Sure, sure.
certainly not the easiest, but I think that it does bring about the most. And in a sense, well, it's not the easiest in the short term. I think in the long term, it almost is, because when you invest in yourself and you learn how to be fulfilled and it becomes a habit, the thing is, once something's a habit, it's not that hard.
Correct.
It's developing good habits that's the tough part, and shedding bad habits is especially hard.
Yes, yes, yes.
But the more that you just normalize productivity in your life and happiness and joy and success, it will keep replicating. And like I said before, it's important to recognize that you have to do that in each area of your life. And there will be
Mm-hmm.
bleed over. I mean, there will be habits that you'll see that will follow you, but it
Mm-hmm.
is possible to have it, totally good in one arena. And you see this with athletes talk. I mean, how many
Oh my gosh.
athletes do you know who are totally nuts outside of athletics or whatever? And so it's really important, especially as you get older,
Mm-hmm.
like really evaluate that stuff, because you want like the total package in your life. You
Oh
know what I
yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's something I really try to impart on my students. And I
Mm-hmm.
talk real with them, because a lot of them are
Mm-hmm.
like 18 years old. So it's not like we have to like tiptoe. Like I'll tell them straight up, like, you kind of got to get your shit together, man, because
Mm-hmm.
it is a tough world out there, and
Mm-hmm.
I want you to kill it. Like
Yeah.
I want you to make money. I want you to be happy. I want you to be married. I want
Right.
to prosper, because if you don't envision that for yourself and you don't strive for it, it is not just going to happen. And
Correct.
we live in an all-time competitive world right now, and
Yeah.
I don't really get concerned with competing with anyone. But at the end of the day, though, you have to rise to the occasion and show up,
Mhm.
because there are a lot of other people out there that may want it, and it's tough.
Correct.
So
Yeah. Correct. Yeah, man. What a wonderful sentiment. I mean, with that, I mean, we're coming up on time here.
yeah.
Dylan, man, I appreciate you. I really appreciate you so much, and I hope that we can do this again. Sometime. I feel like there's some key takeaways here that for myself, you know, for me that I've gained from this. And I love that you know, I love that I can learn from like my own, like even though there's a little bit of an age difference, my own peers, you know, I like to believe with peers. And again, you know, my compliments to you, man. If I haven't told you enough, you motivate me, you inspire me, you know, sometimes your messages resonate with me too. So I really do appreciate, you know, you coming on and really giving everybody the opportunity to kind of get an insight to your life.
Yeah, I really, really appreciate it, John. It means a lot to me that you did have me on. I do really admire you a lot as well, and you have a great message. I just want to shout out a couple good
Please do.
companies that I have the pleasure of working with. Really, just friends. You know, I keep it pretty low
Of
key. But,
course.
Roll 77 MMA. Just thanks for having my back. It's my boy Ping Pong. He's had a really good company for a while. Makes really, really high quality MMA gear. And then
Right.
my guy Dustin out in LA has a company called In Vegan Veritas, and he's making some really nice apparel. Really good guy. Again, both all original American made sweatshop free companies. So check
Mm.
them out. And if you feel
How
like
about your, yeah, how about your
yeah,
photo
yeah,
business?
yeah.
Yeah,
If
please.
you feel like getting a photo booth once things chill out, it's called Hello Flashy right here in Chicago. So you can
Great.
find us on Instagram at Hello Flashy. And then if you want to look me up or whatever,
Yeah, please.
at Dylan.Ramone on Instagram. So say what's up. And yeah, thanks a lot for having me on, John. I really, really appreciate it.
Absolutely my pleasure. Everybody follow this man. Huge beacon of positivity and all around good dude. Thank you again.
All right. Hey, thanks a lot. Take it easy.
See ya.